Yep, that's fine. Yep. Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead to show you how to set up a simple animation, and then we'll go back to modelling and then go on with materials and lighting after that in the next few weeks. But because you need to do an animation for your next assignment, I just want to make sure you've got some idea about that if you haven't seen how to do them in Revit before. And then even if you don't do it right away, you can think about the things you need to plan for. So you can see this is a far from complete model, but it's got enough to show a concept level animation of this level at least, and maybe even doing something from the exterior as well. So I'll show you that in a second. But here maybe, because that's a fairly round space, it might make sense to try and get a camera view that starts here and then moves around the space. And the trick with animation is to try and keep it fairly simple and not overcomplicate the camera movements. So just to show you the basic process with Revit, you have the down arrow on the quick access toolbar where you can choose walkthrough, or you can go to the view tab and then under the 3D views option there, choose walkthrough as well. Does the same thing. And then with Revit, all you need to do initially is place your camera. So I might place it over here near the entry to that bar, and then place the points where you want that camera to move. So this is walking through the space. So maybe I'll come around to here and finish at the stairs there. Or no, so I'll come around actually and finish looking at these chairs. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you that in a minute. Yeah, that's a different thing. Yep, yep. So, okay, so here you can see I've finished placing my camera points, and so I'm just going to right click and choose cancel, or you can tick finish walkthrough, and that'll do the same thing. So you can see there my camera path, but I'm going to go and play this now. If I choose edit walkthrough, you'll see it will show me the points, but I'm still not going to see the actual walkthrough. So you can choose open walkthrough there, and that will open it. But the alternative, so I'll just say yes there to quit for the time being. The alternative is just to find it in the project browser. So like the rendering and the perspective views and everything else that you have in Revit, you'll find if you go down through your project browser, once you create a walkthrough, it'll add a walkthroughs category, and then you can find all your walkthroughs there. So double click on those. I've done a few before. Okay, so I've opened my last walkthrough, and then to view that, you need to select the border and then choose edit walkthrough. And you can see there it's got the option for play grayed out because I'm at the end of my path. So this is where my walkthrough finishes. I need to take it back to the beginning. Using the previous keyframe button is probably the easiest way. So it's just going to step back through my keyframes, and the keyframes are the points that I've clicked to place my camera. So that's gone back to the beginning. Now that's grayed out. And if I press play, now it'll play through in real time. And we can see a preview of the movement through the space. But the problem is it's probably going a bit too fast, and also I don't have much control over where it's looking. It's just looking straight ahead, and for this space, it probably makes more sense to be looking more towards the centre. And so the other thing you need to think about, as well as the camera position, is the target position, or in other words, where it's looking. So I'm going to go back to level 1, and then you can see the camera position here, and then you can see the direction it's pointing. So if I choose edit walkthrough now, then you can see there the target comes up with a grip, and I can drag that so that I change the direction the camera's pointing. Then I can go to the next keyframe and do the same thing. So having the camera there looking towards the wall probably isn't all that interesting, so I can bring that around again. And again, next keyframe, and here definitely I want to bring that right around. Next keyframe, keep doing that. Whoops. So when it asks you if you want to quit editing walkthrough, it just means you've clicked off to the side and it thinks you want to get out of these tools. So usually they can just say no. And so again here, I've missed it, but I can just say no there and keep trying to grab my target. Okay, so it's just like adjusting a perspective view, but you need to think about each point along your path. Okay, so if I go back now to the beginning, play that through, and we can see that we're looking more towards the centre. And I can maybe fine tune that a little bit, but then the other problem was the speed. So up here you can see you've got this option for frames, so it's got their frame 1 to 300. And if I click there, you can see we've got a frame rate and then a total number of frames. So do you have an idea of the standard frame rate for film and TV these days? No? So it used to be 24 or 25, depending on if it was film or TV, but now it's 30 for everything. So 30 frames a second is standard. It's going even higher. So they're using much higher frame rates for some things. But mostly you just see that IMAX and things like that. But it is being used a lot more with really ridiculously high frame rates actually. But again, generally 30 is standard. You can see here though, 15 is set in Revit. And so that means it will look a bit more studded or jittery as it's playing through, but also that means you'll have less frames. So in other words, it's less takes less time to produce. So you can probably leave it on 15 initially. Later on though, if you want to get higher quality, you can increase that frame rate. And so then you need to know the frame rate to work out your total number of frames. Okay, so if you have 15 frames a second, and the total number of frames is 300, 300 divided by 15 is 20. That means you have 20 seconds of animation, and that determines the speed. So if I double that, if I make it 600 frames in total, that means I'll have 40 seconds of animation. And so I'm still travelling the same length in that 40 seconds that I was in 20 seconds, so that means I'm going to be travelling at half the speed. So I'll play that now, and it's going to be a lot slower, more graceful movement. Okay, so those are the things you want to think about, and often slower is better. One of the main problems with speed, with 3D animation especially, done by people at just beginning, is making it too fast. And so I'm happy with that speed. I could probably do more work on the camera direction. And actually something you can think about there, when you are moving through the space using the view, so here I'm using the keyframe options to step through my keyframes up here. You can also use the navigation wheel. So if I click on that navigation wheel, are you using that for your perspective views? Yeah, it's really good for those. That's probably the main reason I use it. You can also use it here. So going back and even playing that through, I can see, well, that column is looking a bit weird the way it sort of comes in and out. So I want to fix that. So we'll just press escape to cancel the playback and go back to that frame. and then using the navigation wheel I can adjust where it's looking. So again here, maybe I don't want to see the column there, so I'll look more to the left. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know to produce most of your animations using Revit. I'll play that through now. Yeah, well, that's the final thing. So I'm going to do another one where I go up and down. So this one here is flat, and probably a lot of yours will be. But when you need to go up and down, or even just look up and down, then you need to look in elevation or section. And I'll show you that with the next one. So that's going to give me an animation though. And maybe one other thing you could use is the field of view there to adjust the width of the view. But just as a tip there, if you're doing that for animation particularly, make sure you keep that symmetrical. It can look really strange if you have uneven adjustments to your field of view, because it means you're not working with a symmetrical cone anymore. You're working with a skewed field of view, which can seem strange when you get movement. It's just very unnatural because our eyes have a very symmetrical field of view, and it just seems, again, unusual to people like us, or to anyone that has an eye, which is obviously everyone. So again, here I'm just going to say this time yes to quit editing the walkthrough, and now I want to export that. I might just quickly show you, if I set this to realistic and then play, it will be slower. It's slow already, but this is probably slower than the real animation speed, because what I'm doing here is playing back in real time, and this uses the hardware of the computer to give me that display. So a better computer, better graphics card particularly, is going to play faster, and this is really one of the main things that, or main reasons that people spend a lot of money on graphics cards. So if you're wondering why there are $20,000 graphics cards, and there are, it's for people who do a lot of 3D animation, so they can work and do everything in real time. But if you're not doing that, then it's not worth getting those ridiculously expensive graphics cards, and normally a $100 or $200 graphics card is going to do everything you need. So to then produce that animation as a separate file, you can go to the main menu, then choose Export, scroll down to the bottom, Images and Animations, and then Walkthrough. Then you have the option for visual style. If you choose rendering, it will do a full render, and it will take days. So think about how long it takes to render one frame. It might take 10 minutes if you're lucky, probably not. But even if it takes 10 minutes, times 600 frames is 6,000 minutes, which is, what, 100 hours? And so that's 4 days just to render this animation. Not animation. No. So only stills can be done in the cloud. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, wireframe or any of these other options, down to realistic with edges, they all work just fine. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but this I wouldn't expect any rendered animation. Yeah. So realistic with edges usually works pretty well, but you've also got to think about the resolution. So here, 622 by 426. Do you think that's a high resolution? No, it's not. And a good benchmark these days is probably what many of us stare at all day, every day, which is your TV. Standard HD resolution is 1920 by 1080. And so that will give you a good reference for this resolution, 600 by 426, so it's less than half. Well, if you can do it up to 1920 by 1080, that's good. Most screens these days, most computer screens even, will do that resolution. or that pixel. So 1920 by 1080, so 1920 wide and 1080 high. And here, so this one is 622 wide and 426 high. Now, if I make this 200%, then it should be, oh no, sorry, there we go, it should be higher, but it's going a bit funny. So the other option is just to try typing in higher values there for the dimensions. Exactly, yeah, it does, yep. So I'll try just making this 1,000 for the width, and then you can see it's brought the height up as well. So I can go a bit higher there, so let's try 1,500. Let's make that higher. But yeah, so then if you click in this zoom, it seems to make it go back. So I'm going to make that 1,500. Click over to the side. It's 40 seconds, which is fairly long. It's much longer than I'd normally recommend. But I'll just show you. If I click OK, it'll ask me for a file name. It's going to leave it on AVI, which you probably all have seen before. It's a pretty common video format. And then also when you're rendering or exporting animation, even if you're not rendering, if you're just exporting it, still a good idea to do it to a local hard drive, because if you're doing it to a network drive, it's got to go through the network cable to some computer in Ultimo probably, and it's fairly instant these days. It's the speed of light, but still a bit slower than just sending it to your local hard drive. And it's got to do this repeatedly, so it's not a bad idea just to leave it on your local hard drive in the My Documents folder and then copy the file from there afterwards. For the video compression, it's really important that you do not use uncompressed. No. So always use a compressor or a codec. And so here you've got Microsoft Video 1 is a pretty good standard these days, so just use that and leave the other settings on default. Click OK. And you can see there, it's not as quick as it was before, but it's still a whole lot faster than rendering. And so there you can see down below, it's got the count, so it's still only 10% in, but again, if you think this is slow, then have a look at a rendered animation going through. We'd be probably 1% into one frame in this time. Oh, it's faster than Revit. It's definitely faster to render than Revit, but still rendering animation is always slow, no matter which program you're using. Oh, days. Oh, I'd be looking. Honestly, if you're planning on doing rendered animation, I'd be starting to render them a couple of weeks out from your presentation, at the latest. Yes. Yeah. Yes, yeah, you can use computers here. And you can even leave them going over the weekend. And so a good approach is to just find some spaces that are pretty well complete, do a simple animation for those that's often really effective. So orbiting around a bar or just moving slowly through a long space, or panning across a wide space slowly, and that might be a 10 or 20 second animation at most, but probably 10 seconds is still long enough, especially if it's high quality rendering. And you can set that up before you've finished everything else and just have it rendering on a computer that no one's using. And so you can start, and that's the key to it. If you want rendered animation, start it early, and there's no problem to just set it and leave it rendering. If you need to change it and do it again, then that's what you have to do. But also, by starting the process early, you know what you're in for, and you can prepare. If you've got problems, you run into issues, you can correct that. But if you leave it up to the last minute, if something goes wrong, and it often will, then you've got no way of fixing it.
So if we could, for example, like have a test renders to make it very quick, so we just test it in time.
Yeah. Yep.
Would you just select, like,
Yeah, you can do that in Max as well. You've got actually more different options for doing that in Max that are a bit better than this. That's right, and that's what you should always do. Test it like that, and then you'll even do test rendered animations. So you do low quality renders, and you can sometimes get the renders down to 10, 20 seconds a frame. and get them rendering pretty quickly even. But they will be pretty, ordinary quality, but again, that prepares you for the issues you might come across. So that one's finished, and I'll just show you the file. And there it is. So you can see that once it's exported, it's not vectors anymore. And that's the other thing you need to prepare for. With animation, it's pixels like Photoshop files, but a sequence of them. So the resolution is critical to the quality. Also here you can see the speed, so that's the true speed, and that maybe actually is a bit slow. But you don't know these things until you export it, because in Revit, when you're doing a playback, it's just a preview. So that probably is a bit slow. Normally I go, or most people go too fast, but that one definitely is too slow. So again here, you can just go and edit that. Might change the frames to, say, 450. Split the difference. And then when I go to export that, I think the resolution could even be higher. So I would try 1920. You can even go higher than that, but that probably for this project might be high enough. And I'll see if we can try and push that a little bit though. 2500, that'd be nice if I can get it that high. So with computer screens, you can do higher pixel values than even with HD TV. And you need it because when you're looking at a film image on TV, there are lots of things they do to make it look higher quality, even though the resolution isn't what you probably think now that you've seen how high computer resolutions can go. Isn't that high. 1920 used to seem high, but when you look at what a lot of computer screens go to now, I'll show you. So I'm just going to minimise Revit and let it hopefully, I was hoping it would do it in the background. No, okay, we'll just go into Max and show you there. So Revit should keep chugging away behind the scenes, and I can just show you some resolutions that are used for other things. So, have you seen this one before? 640 by 480? That was a standard resolution. When I started using computers, we still had screens that had that pixel dimension. Do you know what TVs used to be before HD came out? How many pixels do you think they had in Australia? No, less than that. It was 500 and something. Why? 1920. Yeah. And then you might have heard of 4K, so that's 4,000 across. Or even higher, I think, but it's high. So, America was, they had TV before we did, obviously, and so they started out with an even lower pixel dimension than that. I think it was 400. No, it was the low 500s across, and we were high 500s or something. So back before HD, you might have seen TVs in America had blurrier images than what they had in a lot of other parts of the world, just because of that. So you want to get an idea about these pixel dimensions, because when you render as well, that's going to be the same. We'll look at that in Revit in a minute. But then looking at some of these presets, it can give you an idea how high things can go. So if you look at HD TV, there it's got 1920 by 1080, but then they should have some more, here we go. So that's more like a 4K resolution, so 4,000 by 3,000. And it does make a difference. For your animation, you would never want to go probably beyond HD resolution if you're going to render it. But for stills, you may need to go, in fact, you almost definitely will need to go higher than that even. So we'll look at some of these. Okay, so that's finished. So I'll show you the one that I've just done, which is higher than HD, so you can see how much better that is. It's still pixels, and if you look closely, you will see the jagged edges in places around these curves, but much better than it was. Okay, so then to do animation where you have changes in height, I'll do one maybe from the outside. So I want to try and go from here up these stairs. And so I'll go and do a new walkthrough, starting over here, walking towards the building, and then we've got some stairs. So I'm just going to go along those stairs there, then maybe turn around to the left. So again, edit walkthrough, open walkthrough, and back to the previous first frame. So this one, you can see you've got a couple of issues actually. I can't see part of the building. We'll look at the reason for that in a second as well. But then more importantly, once I get to the stairs, I go straight through and back to, do you know where that is? This is on Newtown Square. So there's a laneway behind, that's Alton Lane, which is the lane behind the hub. And so there is meant to be a connection to that, but I don't want to be walking through the stairs to get to it. So going back to the, well, let's go to the project browser so you can see there I've got walkthrough 4 open. I'm going to go to my plan just so you can see the elevations. So I've got here my west elevation, so I'll open that. But then how do I see my walkthrough? Do you remember how to show a camera when you can't see it in a view like this? Guys, so do you remember? You should all know how to do that. How do you show a camera in a view like this? Yeah. So you should know that because you need to adjust your cameras in these views all the time. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Spot on. Yeah, exactly. That's right. So you find it in the project browser, right click, and then show camera. So there, I can see this is the camera view I've selected, and that's where it's set in that level 1 there. So it's the same with walkthroughs. You just find the walkthrough in your project browser, right click, and then again it's just show camera. So there's my my camera viewed from the side, but how do I know where the points are? I still need to click edit walkthrough, and then it will show me the keyframe points. So again, these are the points I've clicked to place the camera. Sometimes you'll need to look in a couple of different views because I can see here the points obviously from that west side, but to see the points walking along the front of the building, it might be easier to look in the other elevation. Here though, I'm most concerned about the points that go along the stairs, so this elevation is going to be the best. So remember what I was doing before? When I was adjusting the camera, I was moving the target up and down. But, so I've lost that, I'll just show that again. But this time I want to move the camera. So back to edit walkthrough, you need to change the option here from active camera to path to do that. So once it's on path, then you can lift these points up, and that is going to lift the camera to different heights. To make it easier here, I probably need to go to wireframe so that I can see my stairs. So you can see now I can then adjust the height of these points to get my camera up to the top of the stairs. And then this point here, that's not too bad. Do you think you'd need to have it stepping up? So going on each step the way you'd walk up the stairs? Yeah, definitely not. Again, just try to... Right, sorry? Exactly, yeah, that's right. But I've seen people try to do it because they think, it's like you're walking through the space when, again, if you look at the way cameras move in film and TV, they are much smoother. So that's the first step, getting your camera height to follow your changes in height. And then have a look at these lines that are coming out from the camera. What do you think they are? Well, the view. So remember before I was changing the target? So this is the direction the camera's pointing. And so that means at the bottom here, it's looking up because the camera path has started to move up. But that's probably a bit unnatural. And so I'm going to change it back here. Maybe actually before I do that, I'll just fine-tune that path and make sure it's not too much up and down. So you want to watch out for when it goes up and then down from that curve there. Exactly, that's right. So so that's important. And then when you go back to the camera, so you've got those two options, path and active camera are the main ones there. So if I go back to active camera, now I can find the camera, which is still back at the beginning here. You can actually drag the camera along the path or use on the Edit Walkthrough tab, the next keyframe button, just to step it along those keyframes. So that's pretty flat, but I'm going to go to the next one, and that is definitely looking up. So maybe I want to be looking more flat. And then again, next keyframe, and again, I don't want to be looking up there. So by the time I'm on the next level, I want that to be looking straight ahead. That's right, exactly. You just lift the target up. That's right. Yeah. And so for long or for tall spaces, that's definitely a good approach. So I'll go and open that walkthrough now, and then go back to the first keyframe. Play that through. So I've still got an issue with the corner of the building missing, that I'll show you how to fix that as well. The main thing now, when I hit the stairs, I go up. A bit quick, going through the doors, and then again at the end, it's still looking up. So I'll see that if I go back to the elevation, Edit Walkthrough, and you can see there is my issue. My final point on the path is still up high. So again, with the path option, you can drag that down. And then back to active camera, making sure it's on the last keyframe, and you can just make sure that's looking straight ahead. So then just going back to the plan, the reason that part of the building's missing is the same as what happens with a perspective view. You can see there that the cone of vision doesn't go far enough. So back to Edit Walkthrough, and then using the camera there, you can see that the option at the end there to drag that cone out is exactly the same. So if I go back again and open that, you can see now I've got the corner of the building. And of course you can still use the navigation wheel to change the direction. So maybe I want to be seeing more of the building at the beginning. So what do you think controls the speed and makes it go more quickly up the stairs than it does along the other parts of that path? Exactly, that's right. Yep, the keyframes. So if I go back to the, maybe I'll just go to the elevation again. And then you can see there I've got, if I go to edit walkthrough, I've got a keyframe at the bottom and then one at the top, but nothing in the middle. So you can go then to add keyframe and stick one in the middle, which will then you like slow it down. So back to edit walkthrough, open walkthrough, play that now, then it should go up the stairs a bit more slowly. There we go. Okay, so you could export that the same way as what I showed you previously. So I'll give you some time to work on those things.